The Glengarry fallacy. In the cutthroat world of sales, the mantra echoes, "Coffee is for closers." A chilling declaration from Alec Baldwin's character in Glengarry Glen Ross, cementing the always-be-closing philosophy into the collective consciousness. Is an archetype, the aggressive hunter, driving for commitment above all else. But what if this cornerstone of sales wisdom isn't just outdated, but actively destructive to your ROI? In the 1980s, Neil Rackham and Huthwaite Incorporated conducted the largest study in sales history, analyzing 35,000 sales calls across 23 countries. They discovered a shocking anomaly. The aggressive hard-close techniques immortalized in Glengarry Glen Ross, Alec Baldwin's Coffee is for Closers, actually decreased success rates in high-value complex sales by over 10%. By the end of this segment, you will internalize the needs-driven sales algorithm. The logic of the aggressive closer is seductive, even rational, especially when operating in a hyper-competitive attention economy where every interaction feels like a zero-sum game. You're taught that momentum is built by constantly pushing for the next step. As historical sales literature proclaimed, closing techniques are strongly related to success. This suggests that without constant pressure, without an unmistakable intention to purchase being elicited, a deal simply stalls. The hunter believes the more frequently you close, the more deals you secure, embodying the spirit that successful sellers don't ask, they tell. This perspective, while intuitively appealing for its directness and perceived efficiency, often appeals to the primal urge for immediate gratification. However, Huthwaite's rigorous data revealed a stark contrast. In the chapter on obtaining commitment, closing the sale, Rackham's team found a negative correlation between the frequency of closing attempts and sales success in larger, more complex transactions. High-frequency closing, far from accelerating deals, generated significant buyer resistance and led to negative interactions. As Rackham observed in his research findings, data from calls showed that fewer successful sales resulted from high-frequency closing than from low-frequency closing. The constant prodding, the assumptive closes, they actively diminish trust and perceived value. The objective, Rackham asserts, is not merely to close a sale, but, as he puts it, "My objective is not to close the sale but to open a relationship." Consider the bleeding neck problem. Imagine a surgeon, mid-operation, constantly asking, "Are you ready to commit to healing now? Will you sign this discharge form?" The patient, with a metaphorical bleeding neck, isn't focused on commitment to the next step but on the underlying problem and the competence of the solution. In today's AI-driven, information-saturated market, where remote work often means asynchronous communication, buyers are more sophisticated than ever. They can self-diagnose, access vast data, and instantly detect inauthenticity. Tactical pressure becomes a low-signal, high-noise communication. It doesn't accelerate a high-value purchase. It triggers skepticism and creates an aversion, eroding the very trust essential for complex, multi-stakeholder decisions. The true ROI for sales professionals in the 21st century lies not in aggressive closing, but in embodying the consultant archetype. This means mastering the needs-driven commitment protocol. First, investigate deeply, dedicating disproportionate time to understanding implied and explicit needs. Second, check for concerns, actively surfacing and addressing all buyer anxieties before proposing commitment. Third, summarize value, clearly articulating the benefits, not just features, that directly address the buyer's explicit needs. Finally, propose realistic advances, suggesting logical, low-risk next steps that move the process forward while building ongoing rapport, rather than demanding an order. This shifts the dynamic from a transactional push to a collaborative pull, where commitment naturally emerges from a well-understood, value-aligned solution. This fundamental reorientation reveals a profound truth. Rackham found that the skills that make you rich selling $50 items will bankrupt you selling $50,000 items. The reason lies in a psychological tripwire we call the scale paradox. The scale paradox. Consider the stark contrast between a door-to-door encyclopedia salesman and an IBM mainframe representative in 1975. The former thrives on emotional impulse and immediate presence, a one-call transaction. The latter navigates a protracted value chain, where the initial buyer must rigorously justify the purchase to an entire board of directors. Using small sale tactics in a large sale isn't just inefficient. It creates commitment resistance rather than compliance, fundamentally undermining long-term ROI. This is the scale paradox at the heart of Neil Rackham's seminal work, Spin Selling. The wisdom here isn't about closing more deals, but about understanding which deals to close and how to build an economic bridge to that outcome. The conventional sales wisdom, often born from low-value, quick transactions, screams, "Always be closing." And indeed, in certain contexts, selling a cryptocurrency token in an attention-starved market, or a quick SaaS subscription to a lone founder, that mantra might yield a positive, albeit short-lived, transactional gain. Yet, as Rackham meticulously demonstrates in his analysis of sales behavior, higher frequency closing does not correlate with more successful sales. For the astute strategist, chasing immediate commitment in a multi-stakeholder, high-value environment is the equivalent of a day trader applying high-frequency trading algorithms to a decade-long venture capital investment. The time horizons, the risk profiles, and the very economics are entirely different. The shift is from transactional urgency to relationship economics, where the true value equation isn't just price, but the profound seriousness of the problem versus the total cost of the solution. This total cost extends far beyond a line item on an invoice in today's remote, AI-driven enterprises, especially within the attention economy where every new initiative competes fiercely for executive mindshare. It encompasses the organizational friction of adoption, the capital expenditure for integration, the opportunity cost of training, and the implicit risk of disrupting established workflows. When proposing a new AI-powered workflow automation to a global remote team, for instance, the buyer isn't just evaluating the software. They're calculating the political capital required to champion change, the potential for job displacement, the burden on already stretched IT teams, and the multi-year impact on the entire operational fabric. Merely pitching features here is akin to selling a shovel to a miner without understanding if he's digging for gold or just trying to move dirt. The perceived ROI is fundamentally misaligned. This necessitates a robust stakeholder mapping protocol. Forget the simplistic decision-maker chart often taught in basic sales courses. Your mission is to unearth the invisible network of gravitational pulls within an organization. Who benefits directly from this proposed change? Who bears the implementation burden? Who holds the budgetary veto power? And critically, who faces the greatest implication, the compounding negative ROI, if the existing problem remains unsolved? This protocol moves beyond superficial, implied needs to deep, explicit pain points across multiple organizational layers, identifying champions and potential saboteurs alike. As Rackham emphasizes in his early findings, in the realm of complex sales, the investigating stage is the most important of all selling skills, and it's particularly crucial in larger sales. The ROI on deep, meticulous investigation, therefore, is directly proportional to the complexity of the organizational structure and the strategic impact of your solution, creating an asymmetric advantage for those who master it. To navigate the large sale, you must master the art of the investigating stage. But most professionals start this stage with a fatal error, the data trap. The data tax, situation questions. In the high-stakes arena of modern sales, time is not just money. It's trust. Every second a buyer spends in a conversation is an investment. And nothing drains that trust faster, nothing levies a heavier data tax, than asking a question whose answer is freely available. This digital era has fundamentally reshaped the landscape of information asymmetry. rendering traditional approaches to initial discovery not merely inefficient, but actively detrimental to your ROI. Neil Rackham, the visionary behind spin selling, astutely recognized the diminishing returns of excessive data gathering long before the internet became a household utility. In his seminal work, Rackham observed, and I quote, "Successful sales calls use fewer situation questions." This was a groundbreaking insight for its time, highlighting that a barrage of purely factual, background questions often disengaged the buyer. However, in 2024, amidst the ubiquitous hum of AI-powered research tools, remote work dynamics, and the fiercely contested attention economy, Rackham's prescient observation evolves from a gentle nudge to an unyielding, profit-driving mandate. Now, let's steelman the traditional argument, giving it its due. One might reasonably contend, especially when reflecting on the analog age, that some initial fact-finding is absolutely indispensable. How else, after all, could a salesperson genuinely understand a client's intricate operational landscape, their existing technological stack, or their current market positioning without posing direct questions about these foundational elements? In a world devoid of instant digital access, asking how many employees do you have? What's your current CRM system? Or, who handles your procurement? Wasn't just necessary. It was the sole gateway to building contextual understanding. This was the accepted cost of entry, a transaction of information without readily available alternatives. However, for today's sophisticated buyer, particularly those operating at scale, this approach is no longer merely inefficient. It is a profound signal of unpreparedness, incurring a significant data tax on their most valuable asset, their attention. As our real-world case study starkly illustrates, a Fortune 500 CEO will, often subconsciously, terminate a meeting mentally if a salesperson asks questions that could have been effortlessly answered by a simple LinkedIn search, a glance at the company's annual report, or even a quick scan of recent press releases. This isn't merely about saving a minute here or there. It is a critical test of respect, demonstrating a proactive investment in the relationship and an appreciation for the buyer's cognitive load. Each unnecessary situation question functions as a BS filter for the discerning executive, immediately devaluing the perceived return on investment of the entire interaction. They are silently but swiftly calculating the opportunity cost of enduring your remedial information gathering. Rackham himself, with his characteristic precision, once posed a critical question that, in the context of situation questions, cuts directly to the economic core of the interaction. Ask yourself who benefits from situation questions, the buyer or the seller. Clearly, it's the seller. In our hyper-connected world, if the seller is still solely benefiting from basic information gathering during the call itself, it represents a fundamental failure of pre-call strategic execution. The ROI of your preparation must now far outweigh the perceived imposition on the buyer. This brings us to our first actionable protocol for mastering spin in this hyper-informed era. The 0S challenge. Your mission, should you choose to accept this strategic imperative, is to conduct the entire initial discovery phase of your next high-value sales call without uttering a single fact-finding situation question that could have been acquired through diligent pre-call research. This isn't about avoiding questions altogether. It's about elevating their quality and purpose. How do you achieve this 0S nirvana, transforming potential liabilities into strategic assets? Through the rigorous, almost military-grade, application of pre-call OSINT, open-source intelligence. Before that critical Zoom dial tone, before setting foot in their virtual or physical boardroom, you must become a digital detective. Leverage every available public data point. Deep dive into LinkedIn profiles for career trajectories and stated interests. Dissect company earnings reports for financial health and strategic pivots. Scour news archives for market challenges and competitive pressures. Analyze industry publications for macro trends impacting their sector, and even explore specialized forums or Reddit for unfiltered sentiment. Your objective extends far beyond accumulating surface-level data. It is to glean contextual insights, to understand not just what they do, but how they articulate their struggles, their aspirations, and the metrics by which they measure success. This diligent pre-call reconnaissance transcends mere information gathering. It transforms you from a transactional data collector into an indispensable strategic partner, arriving ready to discuss nuanced implications, not basic inventory. It is a direct, quantifiable investment in building rapport, accelerating trust, and a tangible, high ROI demonstration of your sophisticated value proposition. Once you stop wasting time on data gathering, you can deploy the most underrated tool in the salesperson's arsenal, the Trojan horse of pain. The Trojan horse, problem questions. The modern business landscape, perpetually reshaped by AI, remote-first operations, and the relentless attention economy, has amplified a critical fallacy. Identifying a problem is often mistaken for understanding its economic impact. Most sales professionals believe their job is to diagnose a superficial wound. But the truly wise, the strategists who unlock significant value, know this surface-level diagnosis is merely a Trojan horse. It's an entry point, yes, but the real conquest lies deeper. Here, we begin to decode the matrix of implied needs, the grumbles, the complaints, the vague dissatisfactions that echo in every organization. A client might say, "Our current software is slow. This is an implied need." Or, "We're struggling with employee retention." Another implied need. These are the symptoms. As Neil Rackham elucidates in his analysis of sales behavior, any statement made by the buyer which expresses a want or concern that can be satisfied by the seller is an implied need. They are the initial signals, but if you stop here, you're merely a technician, not a true value architect. Now, Steelmaning the counterargument. Many successful salespeople pride themselves on quickly identifying any problem. They think, a problem is a problem. I found a pain point, and now I can sell my solution. And for smaller transactions, this might even hold true, offering a quick fix for a minor irritant. But in the high-stakes world of major sales, where the ROI of your solution must justify significant capital allocation and organizational change, raw problems are catastrophically insufficient. Why? Because an implied need, without further development, lacks the economic gravity to compel action. As Rackham observed in his extensive research, in larger sales, the relationship between implied needs and success diminishes. Simply put, a grumble about slow software doesn't quantify the lost productivity, the missed deadlines, or the talent drain impacting the bottom line. It doesn't illustrate the opportunity cost in an attention-starved market. The economic value is yet to be established. This brings us to our essential protocol, the 5 Whys adaptation for sales. Popularized by the Toyota way to fix manufacturing defects, it serves the same function in sales, digging past the symptom to the root cause and critically to the economic implications. When a prospect says, "Our software is slow," don't offer a faster solution immediately. Instead, apply the protocol. Why is it slow? Perhaps it crashes frequently. Why does it crash frequently? Because it's incompatible with our new remote collaboration tools. Why is that incompatibility a problem? Because our teams waste 2 hours a day trying to make it work, impacting project timelines. Why do impacted project timelines matter? Because it delays product launches, costing us approximately $50,000 in lost market share each month. Why is $50,000 in lost market share a concern? Because it directly impacts our quarterly earnings and competitive positioning in an AI-accelerated market. This protocol transforms a vague complaint into a quantifiable, urgent business problem with a clear ROI imperative. It moves the conversation from, "Our software is slow," to, "We are losing $50,000 per month and falling behind competitors due to incompatible, crashing software that burdens our remote teams for 2 hours daily." This is the power of problem questions. They uncover the underlying issues, revealing the implicit economic costs that make your solution a necessary investment, not just a nice-to-have. It's about converting passive discontent into active, profit-driven urgency. But finding the problem is not enough. In fact, if you stop here, you are just a friendly visitor. To become a partner, you must wield the knife. The Quincy rule, implication questions. The Space Shuttle Challenger disaster wasn't caused by a lack of data. It was caused by a failure to internalize the implication of O-ring failure in cold weather. Engineers knew the problem, but the decision-makers failed to grasp its profound, catastrophic consequences. This failure of foresight, of truly understanding the economic and human cost of a technical flaw, is precisely what Neil Rackham's Quincy rule for implication questions is designed to prevent in high-stakes sales scenarios. Rackham, in his astute analysis of thousands of real-world sales interactions, recognized a distinct pattern in how effective salespeople guide a conversation to unlock significant value. He formalized this with what he termed Quincy's rule. As he puts it in his foundational work, implication questions are generally sad as they emphasize problems, making the situation more serious. Why sad? Because they compel the buyer to confront the tangible, often painful economic realities of their unaddressed issues. We're not merely identifying a leaky faucet, we're meticulously calculating the gallons of wasted revenue, the silent spread of reputational mildew, and the creeping structural integrity risk to their entire enterprise's P&L. In a rapidly evolving 2024 to 2025 market, where the advent of AI disrupts industries weekly, and persistent data breaches cost millions in fines and eroded market cap, ignoring these implications isn't just suboptimal. It's a strategic liability and a direct threat to shareholder value. These questions force the uncomfortable but economically vital realization. What is the true, compounding cost of doing nothing? Now, one might reasonably argue that dwelling on negativity, on sad questions, is counterproductive, even manipulative. Conventional sales wisdom, particularly for smaller, transactional sales, often champions an upbeat tone, focusing solely on immediate benefits and quick wins. Indeed, Rackham himself acknowledges this sentiment, noting in his detailed research that it's possible to be successful in small sales without implication questions. Because of this, some people might regard implication questions as unnecessary overkill when the decision size is small. This perspective has undeniable merit for low-stakes, low-value interactions where buyer pain points are explicit and the solution's ROI is self-evident. However, this is precisely where the Munger/Naval mindset, grounded in rational economic calculation, diverges. In the high-value, complex sales that define today's global economy, especially with distributed teams, sprawling tech stacks, and relentless digital transformation demands, the cost of inaction on even seemingly minor operational inefficiencies can cascade into exponential financial and operational damage. Failing to internalize these sad implications in such scenarios is not optimism. It's a profound miscalculation of risk and opportunity cost, akin to ignoring a chronic disease for fear of an unpleasant diagnosis. This brings us to a critical, actionable protocol, the 3-IMP rule. Before any solution is even hinted at, before you present a single feature or advantage, your objective is to prepare and deploy at least 3 distinct implication questions that relentlessly link the buyer's identified problem to their core business objectives and, crucially, to their bottom line. This is the economics of pain in action, designed to magnify the perceived cost of their problem. Consider an enterprise struggling with fragmented customer data across disparate systems, a common ailment in the age of personalized AI engagement. A situation question tells you they have multiple data sources. A problem question reveals it's difficult to get a unified customer view. But the implication questions? That's your so what chain, drilling down to quantifiable impact. 1. So, when your sales and marketing teams lack a unified customer view, what is the actual cost in terms of wasted ad spend on irrelevant campaigns and the missed revenue opportunities from failing to cross-sell or upsell effectively? Direct financial hit, opportunity cost, ROI of data silos. 2. What is the impact on customer churn rates and brand loyalty when your service agents can't instantly access a customer's full history, especially in a competitive attention economy where customer experience is paramount? Customer lifetime value erosion, reputational risk. 3. And if your competitors are leveraging advanced AI analytics on clean, unified data to predict customer needs and offer hyper-personalized experiences, what does that imply for your ability to maintain or grow market share over the next 2 to 3 years? And what's the risk of being outmaneuvered by a more data-driven rival? Strategic market disadvantage, future revenue loss, competitive obsolescence. As Rackham so pointedly observes, these questions take a problem that the buyer perceives to be small and build it up into a problem large enough to justify action. This isn't about fear-mongering. It's about a rigorous, fact-based risk assessment and quantifying the opportunity cost of inertia. It's about helping the buyer to vividly simulate the disaster scenario, the financial bleed, the operational drag, the strategic decay, so they become intrinsically motivated to seek change. You're not just identifying a symptom, you're tracing its impact through their entire organizational physiology. You have made them sad by exposing the bleeding neck. Now, you must make them happy without pitching your product yet. The rescue, need-payoff questions. The true leverage point in the sales matrix, the happy pivot as it's often called, is not when you present a solution, but when the customer articulates its value themselves. We've navigated the sad reality of problems and their implications. Now, with need-payoff questions, we pivot to the happy horizon of solutions, viewed and voiced by the buyer. In the extensive research into major sales, Neil Rackham acutely observes, Quincy's rule states that implication questions are generally sad as they emphasize problems, making the situation more serious, whereas need-payoff questions are happy as they focus on solutions and the benefits of resolving those problems. This isn't mere semantics. It's a strategic psychological shift that reaps exponential ROI. Consider the dynamic of a private equity firm evaluating a distressed asset. The analysts meticulously detail the operational inefficiencies, situation, problem, and project the catastrophic market fallout if nothing changes, implication. But the astute managing partner doesn't just tell the target company CEO how their restructuring plan will save them. Instead, they probe, given the market's current volatility and your decentralized workforce struggling with data silos, how would an integrated AI-powered workflow, as we've discussed, directly impact your valuation multiples and attract fresh capital in the next 18 months? This is the mirror reversal protocol. You don't pitch the life raft. You enable the drowning person to describe how reaching safety will allow them to rebuild their entire enterprise. The buyer isn't just hearing benefits. They are owning the entire value proposition, internalizing it as their own discovery. This self-articulation is the bedrock of internal selling, an indispensable advantage in today's hyper-complex, often remote, and attention-scarce business landscape. Decision-making is no longer centralized. It's a distributed network where consensus and internal advocacy are paramount. Your most potent asset isn't your external sales team, but an internal champion armed with their own words for your solution's tangible benefits. As Rackham elucidates, when buyers articulate the benefits of a solution themselves, they gain confidence and enthusiasm for the product. This internalization makes it more likely they will sell the solution to others within their organization. This is the ultimate financial leverage for your sales cycle, transforming one successful engagement into a cohort of internal advocates, without you ever needing to be physically present. It shifts the buying decision from an external imposition to an internal, self-evident imperative, maximizing your long-term return on every client interaction. Now, a common miscalculation, a Steelman critique if you will, is the belief that in this fast-paced era, directness is always king. Why waste precious bandwidth with more questions? Just deliver the clear, quantified benefits of our AI solution and secure the deal swiftly. And for transactional, low-stakes sales, this approach might offer immediate, albeit shallow, gains. However, for high-value, complex integrations, especially those involving transformative AI solutions, new remote work platforms, or fundamental shifts in data architecture, direct benefit statements are routinely met with skepticism. They are easily dismissed as vendor-centric claims in a world awash with information. The perceived risk of a poor investment is too high. The true economic ROI only crystallizes when the buyer's internal models confirm it, when they personally connect the dots between your solution and their strategic objectives. Need-payoff questions are not slow. They are deeply efficient. They don't just convey information. They forge unshakable conviction, turning implicit desire into explicit, actionable intent. They empower your client to become a more persuasive and effective internal salesperson than you could ever be from the outside. We have moved from problem to implication to need payoff. But there is one specific pivot point that separates a nice chat from a signed contract. The explicit shift. The explicit shift. Imagine a world where the most brilliant innovations, meticulously crafted, sit on shelves, ignored, not because they lack value, but because they are offered at the wrong time to the wrong perception of a problem. This isn't just a marketing failure. It's an economic inefficiency that costs companies billions, stifling growth and turning potential ROI into sunk costs. In the high-stakes arena of major sales, particularly in our increasingly digitized and complex economy, timing is not just important, it is the entire game. And the clock starts with understanding needs. The core insight from Rackham's seminal research, outlined vividly in the chapter on customer needs in the major sale, shatters a fundamental sales misconception. There are not just needs. There are implied needs and explicit needs. Implied needs are the grumbles, the dissatisfactions, the things aren't quite right statements. Our current CRM is a bit slow, or we're having some data integration issues. They are the smoke. But as the research powerfully demonstrates, in complex, high-value transactions, pitching solutions to mere smoke is a fool's errand. It's akin to showing a blueprint for a high-rise to someone who only vaguely mentioned their current office is a little cramped. It might be a problem, but it's not yet a mandate. The true leverage point, the inflection for exponential ROI, lies in converting these implied needs into explicit needs. An explicit need is a clear, unambiguous statement of a want or desire to fix a problem. We must upgrade our CRM to improve efficiency by 20% this quarter. We need a data integration solution that guarantees real-time analytics across all platforms. This is the fire, not just the smoke. The pivot algorithm is simple in concept, brutal in execution. Never present a solution until the need is explicit. Rackham's research, distilled into the SPIN methodology, provides the protocol. After situation, S, and problem, P questions uncover the implied need. You pivot to implication, I, and need payoff, N questions. These are your tools to turn vague discontent into urgent, quantifiable demands. As Rackham emphasizes in the chapter on preventing objections, to make a benefit, you must have an explicit need. But in order to get the explicit need, you normally must first develop it from an implied need by using implication and need payoff questions. This is the strategic delay that unlocks immense value. Consider the Fortune 100 case study highlighted in the research. Sales representatives armed with innovative solutions repeatedly failed because they presented to implied needs. The customer would hint at expensive operational costs, and the rep, eager to demonstrate value, would immediately launch into a detailed solution pitch. The outcome? Customer resistance, price objections, and stalled deals. The winners, however, operated differently. They probed. They quantified the implications of those expensive costs, lost market share, compliance risks, delayed product launches. They waited until the customer, driven by the mounting implications, articulated, "We must reduce operational costs by at least 15% within 6 months." Only then, with a clear mandate from an explicit need, was the door truly open for the solution. In an age saturated with AI-powered sales assistants that can instantly match keywords to solution features, this human-driven, explicit shift is more critical than ever for high-value sales. It's the difference between a bot-generated pitch that gets ignored and a human-led conversation that secures a multi-million-dollar contract. The strongest counter-argument, often made by traditionalists, is that always be closing means always pitching. And in small transactional sales, where the buyer's needs are often self-evident and the risk is low, presenting a solution to an implied need can indeed work. My old laptop is slow dash. Here's a new, faster model. Quick, efficient. But Rackham's deep dive into major sales reveals this is precisely where that shortcut becomes a dead end. In his analysis of customer needs in the major sale, he observes, in larger sales, the relationship between implied needs and success diminishes. The ROI of premature solutioning in a complex sale is effectively zero, or even negative, as it alienates sophisticated buyers who perceive it as pushy and irrelevant. Now that the need is explicit, you can finally talk about your product. But even here, 90% of pros fail because they confuse features with benefits. The benefit mechanism, Type A versus Type B. In the relentless pursuit of revenue, most organizations unknowingly cripple their own sales teams, funneling capital into pitch decks and marketing collateral brimming with claims that simply do not convert. They sell benefits that are not, in fact, benefits. Why? Because they've failed to decode the fundamental benefit mechanism. In the realm of high-stakes sales, value isn't a vague aspiration. It's a verifiable, quantifiable return on investment. Yet, many remain trapped in what Neil Rackham's seminal research labels Type A benefits, essentially advantages. These are general statements of how your product could help, often generic good things. Our software is fast. Or, our service is reliable. They are the equivalent of shouting into the attention economy's void. Generic noise hoping to resonate. They lack specificity, leaving the buyer to exhaust precious cognitive energy connecting these dots to their personal, urgent pain. The actual economic lever, the true ROI driver, lies in what Rackham meticulously defines as Type B benefits. These are statements that directly, explicitly, and undeniably meet a customer's explicit need. As the research in the chapter discussing preventing objections unequivocally shows, Rackham puts it, the presence of Type B benefits correlates strongly with successful outcomes in sales, whereas Type A benefits do not show the same effectiveness. In an age dominated by AI-driven personalization and hyper-efficient markets, sending Type A generalities is akin to broadcasting a single generic advertisement to every potential customer on Earth, a colossal waste of capital yielding negligible returns. Now, I hear the counter-argument, but general advantages do sound good, and they can catch attention, especially when launching new products. And you'd be right sometimes. In low-stakes, transactional sales, a broad advantage might just tip the scales. It can feel productive to list every positive attribute. However, for significant investments in the complex B2B landscape, or when dealing with sophisticated clients looking for a quantifiable edge, these general advantages become nothing more than intellectual static. They fail the ROI test. Rackham's analysis of challenges of new product launches repeatedly found that salespeople often prioritize features and advantages, leading to poorer performance, precisely because they fail to address explicit customer needs first. This brings us to a critical, actionable protocol, the explicit need feature audit. Every quarter, gather your sales and marketing leadership. Lay out every benefit statement from your pitch decks, your website, your case studies. For each statement, ask yourselves, does this directly address an explicit need we have heard from a customer? A problem they have articulated and acknowledged? Or is it merely a general advantage, a good thing that might be relevant? Any statement that cannot be definitively linked to a specific, articulated problem from a target customer must be either deleted or rigorously reframed. This audit enforces the strict rule: do not mention a strength unless it solves an explicit need. In a world drowning in undifferentiated information, a generic advantage is not a value proposition. It is a distraction that erodes trust and wastes the buyer's most precious resource, their attention. The modern buyer, accustomed to tailored experiences from algorithmically optimized platforms, doesn't want a Swiss Army knife. They want the exact tool to solve their current, specific problem. Offering anything less is disrespectful of their time and, ultimately, your own company's bottom line. You have the questions, the needs, and the benefits, but inevitably the customer will push back. The way you handle this defines your bank account. The objection paradox. There exists a pervasive, almost romanticized myth in sales that objections are simply buying signals. The louder the protest, the more engaged the prospect. Many traditional sales trainings perpetuate this idea, framing objection handling as a sophisticated martial art. A series of expertly executed blocks, parries, and counterstrikes designed to overcome resistance. The rationale often presented, particularly from an economic standpoint, is that active engagement, even if adversarial, signifies potential. For sales trainers, this approach offers a clear, distinct, and marketable skill to teach, ensuring a steady demand for their methodologies. If you can teach someone to handle the resistance, they might argue, you've equipped them for battle. This creates a sense of job security for the trainer, positioning them as the essential guide in navigating the complex terrain of buyer reluctance. However, Rackham's monumental research, drawing from tens of thousands of real-world sales calls, dismantles this illusion with surgical precision, revealing a starkly different reality, especially in the high-stakes world of major sales. His data indicates a profound, counterintuitive truth. Successful sales calls feature fewer, not more, objections. This isn't just a nuance. It's a fundamental reevaluation of the ROI calculus of a sales interaction. Every objection handled is a moment of friction, an expenditure of psychological capital from both buyer and seller, and a direct drain on efficiency. In a 2024 landscape dominated by information overload and the ruthless efficiency of remote work, where every scarce unit of attention is critical, such friction is not just inefficient, it's economically catastrophic. As Rackham unequivocally states in his work, many sales training programs promote the idea that objections are a sign of customer interest and that welcoming objections makes selling easier. However, the reality is that high levels of objections often correlate with lower sales success. This suggests that a salesperson spending significant time handling objections is, in fact, operating from a position of weakness, not strength. The truth, as uncovered by Huthwaite's extensive observations, is that objections are not positive buying signals. They are often the symptoms of insufficient need development earlier in the sales process. Rackham doesn't just propose treating the symptoms. He provides a sophisticated protocol for preventing the disease itself. He argues that teaching salespeople to handle objections is akin to teaching a doctor to manage pain without ever diagnosing or addressing its root cause. As Rackham observed regarding this conventional wisdom, teaching salespeople merely how to handle objections addresses only the symptoms of a deeper problem. It misses addressing the root cause, insufficient need development before offering solutions, leading to more objections. The objective is not to become a master debater capable of parrying every thrust, but a master diagnostician who anticipates and neutralizes resistance long before it manifests. This leads us to the preemptive strike protocol, Rackham's algorithmic approach to objection prevention, deeply embedded in the spin methodology. Rather than waiting for resistance, the protocol dictates an intensive, deliberate investigation phase. Imagine a seasoned strategist in the age of AI-driven analytics. Every data point, every potential vulnerability, every strategic advantage is meticulously mapped before deployment. In sales, this means leveraging situation, problem, implication, and need-payoff questions to meticulously uncover and develop the buyer's needs from implicit dissatisfactions to explicit desires before presenting solutions. Asterisk situation questions. These are about gathering factual data, establishing context. But successful salespeople use fewer of these, understanding that generic background checks waste the buyer's precious attention. Think of AI tools automating initial data collection here. Asterisk problem questions. These delve into specific difficulties the buyer is facing. They surface what Rackham calls implied needs, the raw material of discontent. Asterisk implication questions. This is where the magic and the economic justification truly begins. These questions explore the consequences and severity of those problems, magnifying their impact. For instance, how much time and capital are you losing weekly due to these inefficiencies? What's the measurable impact on your team's project deadlines, employee morale, and ultimately, your competitive edge in a fast-moving market, especially with remote team coordination challenges? This stage transforms a minor inconvenience into a pressing, economically significant issue, making the buyer internally articulate the ROI of a solution. Asterisk need-payoff questions. These shift the focus from problems to solutions, encouraging the buyer to articulate the benefits of resolving their issues. If we could effectively mitigate X problem, what tangible improvements would you see in your operational efficiency or market responsiveness? By having the buyer verbalize the payoff, they internalize the solution's value, effectively preempting cost objections and gaining commitment. This structured questioning creates the value proposition within the buyer's mind, making your solution an obvious necessity rather than an external imposition. The research showed that salespeople retrained in this objection prevention approach experienced a significant reduction in objections because they had already established profound value and agreement through the earlier spin stages. They guided the buyer to an internal conclusion, rather than trying to externally persuade them. This strategy optimizes the buyer's scarce attention, especially critical in today's digital noise, turning passive listening into active co-creation of the solution. If you prevent objections, you don't need to close in the traditional sense. You need to do something much more subtle. The anti-close mindset. The traditional sales playbook screamed, "Always be closing." It's a dogma etched into the very foundation of sales culture, championing relentless pressure and the assumption of the sale. And for some transactional interactions, think quick, low-stakes decisions in the hyper-fast churn of the attention economy, it might still appear on the surface to deliver. After all, if the customer's intent is already clear, a swift close saves time. As the conventional wisdom, steelmaned by its proponents, posits. In the Closing Attitude Scale Appendix, Neil Rackham notes the belief that closing is the most valuable of all techniques for increasing sales. This perspective sees every interaction as a finite opportunity to secure a signature, an immediate ROI. But this is precisely where the matrix of complex, high-value sales diverges, where the always be closing mantra, far from being a shrewd strategy, becomes a catastrophic drain on your economic returns. In an era where trust is the ultimate currency and information is abundant, aggressive closing isn't just inefficient, it's alienating. Rackham's seminal research, detailed in his analysis of obtaining commitment, closing the sale, unveils a profound paradox. For larger, strategic deals, the focus must shift from a singular close to a sequence of strategic advances. An advance is a specific action taken by the customer that moves the sale forward. It's a quantifiable step, a tangible progression toward the final decision, requiring an explicit commitment. Think of it like a carefully orchestrated, multi-stage rocket launch. Each successful stage separation, each advance, propels you further into orbit, closer to your mission objective. In stark contrast is the continuation. This is the polite deferral, the cordial handshake, the let's stay in touch that leaves you burning fuel without gaining altitude. Feels good, but it delivers zero economic value. In our digitally saturated 2024 landscape, continuations are often disguised as endless email chains, follow-up calls with no defined next steps, or worse, a competitor swooping in because you failed to secure a clear advance. This isn't just wasted effort. It's a negative ROI on your most valuable asset, your time and customer attention. The goal is not just to keep the conversation going, but to keep it moving. The anti-close algorithm, as derived from Rackham's findings, isn't about passively waiting. It's about strategically building momentum. It's a protocol designed for maximum ROI in major sales, where the trust-destroying ABC mentality is economically unsound. The steps are clear. 1. Investigate and understand *, deeply uncover customer needs. This is where the spin questions come into their own, transforming implied problems into explicit desires. 2. The check-in protocol * before any talk of commitment or next steps, you must deploy the check-in. This is an explicit test for unresolved concerns. Ask. Before we discuss how to move this forward, are there any remaining questions or concerns on your side that we haven't addressed fully? This isn't a fishing expedition for objections to handle. It's a strategic maneuver to neutralize potential friction before proposing the next advance. It demonstrates empathy and competence, building trust. 3. Summarize value * concisely reiterate the benefits that directly address their explicit needs, reinforcing the economic logic of your solution. 4. Propose a realistic advance *. Crucially, you propose a logical, actionable next step that requires a specific commitment from the buyer. This is where the traditional close fails in larger sales. As Rackham observed in his later chapters on sales effectiveness, it's your other behavior earlier in the sale, not your closing technique, that determines whether a customer will buy. The advance might be securing access to the CFO for a budget discussion, setting up a pilot project, or agreeing to share internal data for a more tailored proposal. It's not about forcing a signature on the first date, but progressing the relationship with measurable intent. The case study is stark. The ABC, always be closing mentality, rooted in transactional sales, is demonstrably detrimental in a complex sale. Trying to close too early or too often destroys trust, signaling that you prioritize your commission over the customer's problems. Successful representatives, armed with this anti-close mindset, focus on advancing, securing access to the CFO, setting up a pilot, or collecting data, rather than prematurely pushing for a signature. This strategic patience and focus on mutual, incremental commitment yields a vastly superior long-term ROI. We have the theory, but knowing spin is useless without entelechy, the turning of potential into reality. The Franklin Protocol. The ancient Greeks had a concept, entelechy, the realization of potential. For Neil Rackham, in the unforgiving arena of sales, this isn't an abstract philosophy. It's the razor's edge distinguishing profit from pretense. In an era where endless algorithms promise sales hacks in 60-second clips, many fall prey to what I call the information illusion. mistaking consumption for competence. You've downloaded the PDF, perhaps listened to the summary. But have you transformed? The prevailing wisdom, particularly amplified by the attention economy, suggests that rapid data absorption equates to mastery. We are barraged with microlessons, believing that if we know the spin questions, we are therefore using them effectively. This is the strongest, most insidious counterargument to genuine skill acquisition, the delusion that intellectual assent is equivalent to practical fluency. In the age of AI, where information is abundant and cheap, the actualization of that knowledge is the only scarce, high-value commodity. But Rackham, drawing on decades of empirical research, rigorously dismembers this fallacy. As he states in the chapter on turning theory into practice, simply reading about selling does not automatically improve selling abilities. Actual practice and effort are essential. The book isn't a magic spell. It's a blueprint for surgical precision. It's the difference between reading a pilot's manual and actually flying a jet. You might grasp the theory of situation, problem, implication, and need-payoff questions intellectually, but the actual neuromuscular application, the timing, the tone, the subtle calibration in a live interaction, that requires deliberate, structured effort. Consider the legendary self-improvement of Benjamin Franklin. He taught himself to write with unmatched rhetorical power by meticulously dissecting the Spectator magazine, focusing on one aspect of rhetoric at a time. Vocabulary, then sentence structure, then argument construction. Rackham applies this profound concept of entelechy to sales, presenting a similar disciplined approach to ingraining the spin methodology, the Franklin Protocol. This protocol is not merely advice. It's an operational algorithm for optimizing your sales ROI through focused skill acquisition. The first pillar of the Franklin Protocol is the one behavior rule. Your brain cannot re-architect an entire sales personality overnight. Attempting to simultaneously master situation, problem, implication, and need-payoff questions in a single call is a guaranteed path to cognitive overload and performance paralysis. Rackham's research found this scattergun approach to be deeply counterproductive. Instead, isolate a single spin question type. For a week, maybe two, make problem questions your singular obsession. Identify them, formulate them, deploy them, track their impact. Then and only then move to implication questions. This serial mastery, rather than parallel confusion, builds robust neural pathways for each discrete skill, converting fragmented knowledge into reliable capability. Next comes the rule of three, fused with the concept of quantity before quality. Many shy away from new behaviors after a single awkward attempt. This is economic folly. Rackham's data strongly suggests that first attempts at new behaviors may feel awkward and ineffective. A minimum of 3 trials is crucial to determine if a behavior effectively enhances performance. Think of it like a new software update for your sales process. It takes a few reboots to fully integrate and stabilize. Your objective in these initial repetitions isn't perfection, but repetition itself. Just as a language learner prioritizes speaking frequently over flawless grammar, a salesperson must prioritize frequent, even clunky, application of a new spin question. The quality emerges organically from the sheer quantity of practice, optimizing your learning curve for maximum long-term retention and effectiveness. Finally, the safe harbor protocol. You wouldn't test a new, unproven surgical technique on a critical patient, nor would you deploy experimental code directly into a live, high-traffic production environment. Rackham underscores this. Avoid experimenting with new skills during critical sales situations. Start practicing in lower-stakes scenarios to gain comfort before applying new techniques in high-pressure contexts. Identify your low-stakes leads, your less critical prospects, or even internal role-playing scenarios. These are your training grounds. Treat them as laboratories for iterating on your newly acquired spin behaviors. This dramatically reduces the potential downside risk of skill acquisition, ensuring your learning doesn't erode high-value relationships or jeopardize crucial revenue streams. It's a calculated, risk-mitigated approach to behavioral change, guaranteeing that your learning investment yields positive ROI. But how does this 1980s methodology survive in the 2024 landscape of AI and automation? The AI force multiplier. The traditional sales process, for many, remains a sacred scroll, a ritual passed down through generations. Yet, in our hyper-accelerated 2024 economy, adherence to archaic methods is no longer merely inefficient. It is a direct drain on your return on investment. The question isn't if technology will reshape sales, but how you will leverage it to amplify your human capital. Spin selling provides the foundational architecture. AI offers the advanced robotics to build the skyscraper of modern sales efficiency. Consider the situation stage, often a time sink for conventional reps. Neil Rackham's extensive research consistently showed that successful salespeople used fewer situation questions. As he noted in the chapter on sales behavior, the investigating stage is the most important of all selling skills, and it's particularly crucial in larger sales. But it's not the volume of questions. It's the quality and relevance. Every minute a human spends asking easily verifiable facts is a minute of the prospect's finite attention, and your own valuable selling time utterly wasted. In 2024, AI tools like Perplexity and ChatGPT have effectively rendered the primary situation stage obsolete for humans. The modern spin rep uses AI to know the prospect's business better than they do, pre-populating their understanding before the call even begins. This allows them to jump straight to high-value implication questions, shifting their role from a basic fact-finder to a strategic consultant, with AI acting as the tirelessly efficient junior analyst. This isn't about replacing human intuition, it's about augmenting it, allowing the human to operate at a higher level of strategic engagement, armed with pre-processed, actionable intelligence, and maximizing the ROI of every interaction. Now, let's turn to the engine room of spin selling. Implication questions. This is where the profound skill truly lies, transforming an implied need into an explicit need, as Neil Rackham meticulously outlines in his analysis of customer needs in major sales. Crafting powerful implication questions is an art, demanding deep empathy and strategic foresight to articulate the far-reaching, often unconsidered, consequences of a problem. But what if an LLM could act as your personal ideation partner, generating a diverse array of potential implications based on initial problem statements? Imagine feeding ChatGPT a client's implied need. Say, our current reporting system is slow. The AI could then brainstorm dozens of logical implications. Delayed strategic decisions, increased compliance risk, higher operational costs due to manual workarounds, impaired data-driven marketing, missed growth opportunities. You become the discerning editor, selecting the most potent implications to explore. As Rackham emphasizes in Chapter 4, the central purpose of implication questions in larger sales is to take a problem that the buyer perceives to be small and build it up into a problem large enough to justify action. AI becomes the force multiplier for this crucial problem-growing mechanism, enhancing the economic justification for your solution. The ultimate ROI accelerator, however, lies in the scenario simulation protocol. Before any significant sales engagement, the modern spin practitioner engages in a simulated role-play with an advanced LLM. Protocol. The AI Sales Crucible. 1. AI as prospect * instruct ChatGPT to role-play as your target prospect, providing it with extensive background, company details, industry trends, common pain points, stakeholder personalities, competitor landscape, gathered from your automated situation gathering tools. 2. Spin sequence execution * practice your entire spin questioning sequence situation, now largely confirmation-based, as AI did the heavy lifting, problem, implication, and need-payoff questions. The AI responds in character, offering objections, voicing concerns, or expressing implied needs. 3. Real-time feedback and iteration asterisk after each question or conversational turn. Pause and ask the AI for critical feedback. How effective was that question in uncovering a deeper need? What potential implications did I miss? How could I rephrase for stronger impact? Iterate immediately to refine your approach. 4. Objection forecasting asterisk force the AI to present the strongest possible objections at various stages of the simulated call. This isn't about avoiding objections but inoculating yourself against them, as discussed in the chapter on preventing objections. By proactively addressing the root cause, rather than merely treating the symptoms of objections, as Rackham so acutely observes, you build a robust defense. Some might argue, with a degree of validity, that this deep integration of AI risks dehumanizing the sales process, transforming genuine connection into a mere algorithm. They contend that the spontaneity and nuanced empathy of a truly skilled human cannot be replicated, and that too much preparation leads to rigid, inauthentic interactions. But this perspective fundamentally misunderstands leverage. The AI sales crucible protocol isn't about replacing the human. It's about offloading the immense cognitive burden of mere information gathering and basic tactical preparation. By outsourcing the drudgery and the predictable, the human salesperson is liberated to focus entirely on the unpredictable. The subtle emotional cues, the unspoken anxieties, the moment-to-moment improvisation that truly builds rapport and trust. AI handles the data and the predictable patterns, allowing the human to bring their full emotional intelligence and creative problem-solving to bear. This is not automation of selling. It is automation for selling, maximizing the leverage of human insight where it matters most, driving superior economic outcomes. We have dismantled the sales process and rebuilt it. Now, the final verdict, the consultant's Bible. The modern attention economy, awash in fleeting trends and digital distractions, often rewards the loudest, most immediate pitch. But for those operating in the true arenas of economic value creation, where stakes are high, decisions are complex, and capital allocations are measured in millions, a different playbook is required. A playbook of profound influence, not mere persuasion. This brings us to the ultimate verdict on Neil Rackham's spin selling. Before we crown it, let's perform the anti-avatar check. This book is not for everyone. If you sell commodities, sneakers, or low-stakes subscriptions, burn this script. Spin is too slow for you. Its methodology is designed for high-stakes problem-solving, where the perceived cost of an action far outweighs the perceived cost of the solution. This is not a sales book. It is a book on leadership and influence. The ability to make someone realize their own pain and then thank you for fixing it is the ultimate economic skill. The core unfair advantage of spin, from a rational economic perspective, lies in its surgical precision. It's a diagnostic protocol, not a sales script. Imagine the economic landscape as a complex human body. Many salespeople are like quacks offering snake oil, treating symptoms with a generic elixir. But the spin practitioner is a skilled surgeon. They don't jump to prescribing, they diagnose. First, the sad questions. These are your problem and implication questions. They are the scalpel, methodically uncovering the hidden malignancies in the client's operation, the systemic inefficiencies, the bleeding neck issues that erode profitability. As Rackham observed in his research, the investigating stage is the most important of all selling skills, and it's particularly crucial in larger sales. You are not asking if they have a problem, but how deeply it's costing them. In an era where AI can provide a deluge of data on market conditions, the human role is to make that data mean something in the client's specific context, to translate raw metrics into palpable pain. You're quantifying the cost of the problem, making it so undeniable that inaction becomes fiscally irresponsible. Then come the happy questions, the need-payoff questions. These are the restorative phase of the surgery. Once the pain is understood and acknowledged, you guide the client to articulate the return on investment of resolving that pain. You don't sell a solution. You co-create the vision of a superior economic state. This is where the client, not you, performs the internal selling, calculating their own ROI. As Rackham states, the real skill is how you grow those problems big enough to get action. In a remote world, where engagement is paramount, this iterative problem-solving and value articulation is how you bypass the mute button of the attention economy and truly capture a prospect's mindshare. The ultimate call to action here isn't to close a deal, but to facilitate the client's own journey from implicit problem to explicit need, making your solution the inevitable, high ROI choice. So, the final verdict, for those navigating the high-stakes, high-complexity sales cycles of 2024 and beyond, from bespoke AI integrations to enterprise-level SaaS, from strategic consulting to large-scale infrastructure projects, spin selling is not merely recommended. It is the fundamental operating system for influence. It's a masterclass in strategic questioning, turning conversations from transactional pushes to collaborative explorations of mutual economic uplift. It elevates selling from a pursuit of revenue to a practice of profound problem-solving, aligning your economic incentives with your client's deepest needs. This is a definitive buy. Is spin selling actually a form of therapy for businesses? Next time on 60 Minutes Book Wisdom, Section 14 Placeholder. The relentless drumbeat of the modern economy, fueled by AI's efficiency gains and the always-on demands of remote work, often preaches a singular gospel: speed. Act now, commit fast, or be left behind. But what if the highest ROI strategy in complex environments isn't always immediate action, but a deliberate, strategic placeholder action? Consider the modern professional, adrift in an ocean of digital notifications, each a micro-demand on their finite attention. The pressure to respond, to engage, to do something is immense. Yet, true leverage often comes from intentional non-action, from reserving mental capacity and optionality for when the signal is clear. Think of it like a seasoned chess grandmaster, not rushing moves, but strategically placing pieces to control the board, setting up future attacks while keeping possibilities open. These are not idle gestures. They are placeholders, each a calculated deferral of irreversible commitment until the optimal moment reveals itself. One might argue that placeholder actions are merely sophisticated procrastination, a symptom of indecision in a market that rewards speed and decisive execution. The critic, a proponent of the always be closing mantra, would contend that every moment of non-commitment is a moment lost, a potential deal slipping through one's fingers. This perspective, valid in high-velocity transactional sales, places a premium on immediate conversion, viewing any pause as a weakness. However, spin selling's profound insight shatters this illusion, especially in high-stakes major sales. As Neil Rackham emphasizes in his foundational work, the investigating stage is the most important of all selling skills, and it's particularly crucial in larger sales. This isn't about rushing to solution. It's about a methodical, almost forensic, exploration of the client's landscape. This entire investigative phase is, in essence, a series of strategic placeholder actions, questions asked, insights gathered, understanding deepened, before any solution is tabled or commitment is sought. The ROI here is exponential. Less wasted effort, higher conversion, and far more durable relationships built on genuine need, not coerced sale. The book further refines this with the concept of proposing realistic commitments over immediate closes. In his analysis, Rackham observed that successful sellers propose realistic next steps instead of asking for the order. This is the epitome of a placeholder commitment, a micro-advance that maintains momentum without demanding an endgame decision before its time. It's a low-friction step forward, designed to build trust and gather further data, rather than triggering resistance from a buyer pressured into premature closure. So, how do we operationalize this wisdom in an era where FOMO drives hyperactivity? Embrace the Strategic Pause Protocol, SPP. 1. Identify the decision point horizon asterisk before any interaction. Define the absolute latest moment a firm commitment must be made. This creates a temporal buffer. 2. Deploy inquiry placeholders asterisk instead of offering solutions. Deploy situation, problem, and implication questions as strategic probes. These questions act as placeholders for information, drawing out explicit needs rather than assuming them. This is the intellectual equivalent of sending out reconnaissance drones before committing ground troops. 3. Propose next step mini advances asterisk instead of closing on the entire deal. Propose a next, small, mutually beneficial step. Shall we schedule a follow-up to discuss the implications we've uncovered? Is a placeholder commitment that keeps the dialogue open and productive, preventing both buyer fatigue and seller desperation. 4. Leverage reflection windows, asterisk incorporate dedicated time post-interaction for analysis. As the book implicitly suggests in its plan, do, and review framework, this reflective placeholder is crucial for learning and adapting, maximizing the ROI of each call. In our AI-accelerated world, this window becomes a vital human interlude, allowing for synthesis that algorithms can't yet replicate. The profound economic benefit of this approach is in the reduction of churn, the increase in deal size, and the cultivation of long-term client value. It's an investment in understanding, deferring immediate gratification for superior, sustainable returns. The alternative is a high-volume, low-conversion treadmill, constantly chasing new leads because existing ones are alienated by transactional impatience. But for all its strategic brilliance, how does one cultivate the discipline to implement such counterintuitive behavior when every instinct screams for immediate closure? Placeholder.